Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this marvellous, marvellous Monday. I say it's Monday, unlike what the earlier video would have told you, because I was going to do 2 videos yesterday, but I did it and then I forgot to publish it because I'm an idiot. So I think there'd have been a video earlier that said it was Sunday when it was. Just don't listen to me when I talk about what day it is. You're looking absolutely amazing. It's Monday, new week, and the summer holidays are officially over. And in this video, we are talking about, of course, which seems to be the hot topic at the moment because so many people have reached out to me, reference this video, which is a J Ombre video. J Ombre. Always say it wrong. It's Pav. That's the easiest way. Can't fuck up saying Pav, can I? So it's a Pav video. And look, Pav does a lot of videos. He's very good at what he does. He has delved into the narcotics angle in the Idaho 4 extensively. Now, the narcotics angle for me isn't my primary thing here. I'm not saying it's not a narcotics angle in the Idaho 4 case. I feel that it's closer to home, and my top of the tree, if you like, my number one would be that this was or is powerful people, potentially powerful youths with powerful and influential parents, something spiraled out of control, and yeah, that's my number one. Not so much a narcotics angle, but again, I'm not saying that he is wrong. I'm just saying that we differ in opinions there. But what he covered in this video was some writings done by Bryan Kohberger, and a few of you had reached out and you said, "Look, have you seen this video where it's Bryan Kohberger talking about the judicial system?" He talks about the fact that the Innocence Project exists, really why they exist, talks about the statistical analysis of how many people, which we've spoken about, we've talked about the specifics of how many people who are innocent of the crime will actually plead guilty to crimes. And then later on, this latter proportion of the video, he goes through another piece of writing. And it talks about juries and the criticism of a jury member of the other jury members. And basically the entire work's about a corrupt system. That he's well aware that the judicial system within the United States is extremely corrupt. And a lot of people had reached out. They're like, what do you think? What do you think? Because I think it's taken a lot of people aback because it shows that Bryan Kohberger was incredibly aware of the system, how the system worked, the problems within the system. And it's like what I said in the video earlier today, where, these videos and these photographs get leaked and it's almost like we're being gaslit. We're being gaslit because we're left in a situation where this case didn't really come to a proper conclusion. It didn't go to trial. We didn't see an individual who was accused have a load of evidence presented that left us in this situation where he was proven to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We were left in this almost like a purgatory where you sat there thinking, well, I don't really know what happened there. Bryan Kohberger, they said he did it. We didn't really see any evidence of him doing it. Yes, there was some circumstantial evidence, but that seemed to be weak as piss. And I don't want to go round and round and round in circles. You know what my opinion is on the stuff that was shown about Bryan Kohberger and the issues that I have with it. But it was interesting, and I found, and I thought to myself, could you imagine being Bryan Kohberger, right? And just for a second, even if you're someone who believes Bryan Kohberger did this crime, because a lot of people turn around and say, well, why would he plead guilty to this crime? Why would he plead guilty if he didn't do it? And you think to yourself, look, if he's got ASD, for instance, if he's kind of on the spectrum, he's got some things that he can really focus on. He over focuses on things. He pulls it apart, and he's sitting there, and also is insanely aware of the problems within the judicial system. Then he would have known potentially how this was going to play out. So when we turn around and say Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to avoid the death penalty, that's what everybody says. Do you know what I mean? Even I don't know whether any of you have cottoned onto it, but even when mainstream media, when they talk about this Idaho 4 case, and and anybody mentions Bryan Kohberger and the plea deal, I don't turn around and say, well, he took a plea deal because he did the fucking crime. They turn around and say, well, he took a plea deal to avoid execution. And you think to yourself, if you're sitting there and you think that the system's corrupt, you're going to get fucked. Wouldn't that be an incentive to think, I've got to play a different game here? I have got to do something different. But you're left with the same question that I left with yesterday. You think to yourself, if you're acutely aware of the issues, if you know that jurors and juries can be biased, that they will be impacted by external forces, such as in the Idaho 4 case, we saw the mass promotion of Bryan Kohberger and his guilt way before trial, and the last two nails in the coffin, if you like, in the forms of the documentaries that we witnessed that were pushing out things and saying, look, this is never seen before evidence that would suggest that Bryan Kohberger is indeed guilty. And that every single sort of angle that the defense took, there was a rebuttal to it. It almost looked like, and we've all said it, that Stephen Hitler was on the side of the prosecution, the fifth wheel of the prosecution. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, there's nothing I can do here, the system's bent. If I go to trial, I'm going to likely be found guilty because the jury are going to fuck me over, so I can get sentenced to death, because they'll then sentence me to death, and then I'm going to face the firing squad. Do you think that he would have had the strength to roll the dice and think, fuck it? Do you know what I mean? Because I've always thought this plea deal's crap. Do you know what I mean? It's a rubbish deal. Why would anybody take it? Especially, why would an innocent person take it? But then I factor in, look, the guy potentially ASD. We know that there's, things in the background that could have influenced his choices and his thought process. And I'm just thinking to myself, if I was in that position and I had kind of inside knowledge of the system itself and how bent and corrupt it was, and I thought I can't beat it, I feel that it could have been enough for me to take a deal. And we know that that's what happened. The Innocence Project literally states and gives statistical analysis of people who will plead guilty to crimes such as murder in order to avoid the death penalty, because the thought of being executed is enough. It is enough to chuck the towel in and think, I don't want to die, and to live inside, and to hopefully something happens later on down the line and I get exonerated, because it's possible. The Innocence Project, with Bryan Kohberger being, again, very aware that the Innocence Project exists, what they're there, what they do. I'm starting to wonder whether that is indeed the avenue that Bryan Kohberger could take. Is Bryan Kohberger going to go down the route of the Innocence Project? Are we going to see the Innocence Project take up Bryan Kohberger's case? It does leave you with some questions, and we'll touch on them questions live. We'll have a chat live. But I just want to acknowledge the fact that, yes, people had reached out to me. They talked about Jay Ombre's video. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. The channel is Jay Ombre. I weren't going to play his video. I find that quite disrespectful to play other people's videos unless it's short and I can, cover it and then send you over. This is a 50-minute video. Maybe I'll go over some proportions of it in the live. It's a good video. But yeah, it just gives you an insight into Bryan Kohberger being acutely aware of how corrupt the fucking system is. And when you look at his story and how it plays out, I can just imagine his cogs ticking over and thinking, well, I'm in the very fucking system and I'm watching it play out what only a little while ago I was literally writing about. It's just whether he would have had the stones to push through and say, nah, fuck it, I'm taking this to trial. I want everything to go to trial. Let me know down below what you think. Does having prior knowledge of how corrupt the system is, would that have ramifications that would lead you to think that the plea deal was him throwing the towel in? Is it an indication of a different way to go about it? When he talks about exoneration, did he potentially mean exoneration through the Innocence Project, because he knew that even from that short initial interview, he knew that he didn't have what it was going to take to, like alibi, for instance. If he knows that he's on his own, he's in this area, he frequents this area, there is no alibi, and they're gunning for him. This should scare people. I'll leave you with this. This should scare people. Bryan Kohberger might have done this crime, but we haven't been shown that Bryan Kohberger did this crime. And anybody who's sitting there now and thinking that you have been shown and convinced beyond a reasonable doubt he did it, don't forget that the beyond reasonable doubt for a lot of you is purely the fact that Bryan Kohberger said he did it. But there are many, many people across the United States of America who will throw the towel in and say, yes, I did it, and they didn't. It's a harsh truth. Love you all, and I will catch you all live later. Mwah.